Okay, just a quickie before we get into today's episode, because I recorded the episode yesterday and I'm recording this today, Friday. The waitlist is now live for Speak Up. So the first module will be going out next week. So if you're interested, if you want to find out more, I'm not going to do a weird sales pitch or anything like that. I'll just send you the link when it goes live. So you can see what's included in the course. It's all there for you and you'll be able to sign up probably by tomorrow. So just let me know. You can either click the button that says join the waiting list, or you can just email me directly, hello@NikkiRaby. Hello, how you doing? How's your week been? It's Friday, but it's actually Thursday for me because I'm getting ahead of myself and I'm really excited to share this part 2 with you. Also, since I shared part 1, there's been another layer that somehow happened, and it's so weird how these things come in a roundabout way, but I'll tell you more in a second. So I hope your week's good. If you're going, I'll just start with this one and then go back, I would recommend doing the opposite. So starting with part 1 and then going into part 2, because it's really important that you have context with this and a bit of a process, because I know what can happen. We can just all feel really overwhelmed with this stuff. And I think that's an overriding theme at the moment, isn't there? There just feels like a lot going on, a lot swirling around. So if I can make it really practical, I absolutely will. So you might want to grab a piece of paper and a pen so you can really think about how these things can apply to your business. Okay, so we left off in part 1 talking about thinking as your online course as a business pitch, essentially. So really making sure that it justifies itself being in the market, because these things take time and effort and skill and money quite often. So it's really important that you know why you're doing this thing and what it's going to do and how you can really support people and what the effect of it is going to be, essentially. So this brings me on nicely to my second question, which is, how can you go broader and wider? Now, I've been very honest, and I'm not going to mention any particular courses or offerings or things like that, because that's just not my vibe. I'm not going to come on the internet and say, well, that was terrible and I'm never doing this, or I'm not going to do one of those weird clickbaity things where people do a review of somebody's work. I'm just not all about that. So I'm going to speak in general terms, but I will say that I have purchased things in the past that I don't necessarily feel have given me the level of detail that I've required. So sometimes at the end of watching a video, I might feel better, or I might feel like things are possible, but there are some things that fundamentally I would like, especially if it's promised as well, I would like the step-by-step version of this. And I never want to feel like my client and my customer, and slightly with this Speak Up program, it's slightly different, because of course it is about doing your own work in terms of what do you want to talk about and what's going to be relevant for your business. But there are definitely things that I've learned along the way that I can just shortcut that process for you. Like, here's how to negotiate a deal. Here's what you need to consider. Here's how to create a really impactful keynote. Here are some tools that you can have in preparation if you're going to be a podcast guest, for example. So many things that I can give you a bit of a step-by-step guide. Now, this is not to say this is the only way that you should do it, but it will give you a strong foundation. And like with everything, you can make it your own. You can add your own twist. You can at least use it as a bit of a benchmark. Because I don't know about you, there's so many times in my life, certainly, where I'm just staring at a blank screen and going, right, okay, inspiration, this is now the time I would like you to show up. This would be a really perfect time. So whenever I'm thinking about especially rebooting this and relaunching it, I guess, I'm making sure that it's aligned with who I want to be in this world. And actually, I want to be somebody who goes broader and wider, because I feel like I've figured out a lot of these things along the way through terrible trial and error and going backwards and forwards and messing things up and really trying 100 times to do something, and then finally on the 101st time I get the result that I'm looking for. So when I'm thinking about going broader and wider, I don't want this just to be a course where people go, yeah, I did the course, but I actually didn't do the course. Like, I bought the course, but I just did module 1 and then I got distracted. I want this, it sounds like a really weird relationship, but I want this course to be really addictive. I want it to be that case where you're like, oh my goodness, I want my kids to go to bed right now so I can get back in and get stuck into the course. Like, I want it to have that impact. I want to keep bringing you back in and being excited and making sure that this feels doable. Because you can listen to podcasts or read books or get fresh air or whatever it might be that makes you feel good. But I don't want it, I always say in my speaking gigs, I don't want you just to feel good. I don't want you just to feel motivated and like, yeah, great, okay, off we go. I want you to implement. I want you to consider how you can take this material, and I want you to get paid for speaking. That is really key for me. So I'm going to be going broader and wider. And that being said, it would be so easy just for me to stay offering the first version of the course that I created. And I stand by that implicitly, that it's really strong material. But I know personally I can give more. I can go further with it. And I think that's really important, to play the long game. And for me, it's really about holding that material, that content that I know will be so useful for people, and really giving it the credit and the time and the effort that it deserves. So of course, I could just stay in the same situation, selling the same course, which has sold many, many times, but I'm actually interested in the long game. Like, is this just going to be another casual thing that people go, yeah, sure, yeah, it was good, I kind of did a bit of it, or am I like, let's go all in, let's be really excited about it. The next thing I want you to consider is who is going to love what you have to offer. And I use that word love because I want people to genuinely love what they've purchased. I'm not really interested in just taking somebody's money so they can kind of dabble. I want people, in terms of my online courses, who think really carefully and consider the purchase, and then go, I am all in, Nikki. I've dedicated my time. I've cleared my diary. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. I want that enthusiasm of, this is not just a casual purchase or a nice to have. I want it to have the equivalent, essentially, of that thing. You know, when we didn't have the internet when we were kids, and I lived in a small village. So we had our local town, and quite often, I mean, the shops were fine. They were fine, but they were quite limited. And then sometimes there would be a moment where my mum would take me to Meadowhall, which is in Sheffield. And Meadowhall, I mean, you can Google it. It's quite an extravagant. Let me just do that. Let's do it live on the podcast. Let me see what Meadowhall looks like these days. You might even know it. It's quite the extravaganza, yeah. So it's all it still looks the same. So it's all kind of glass, and it was so exciting when it first came. We actually used to go on school trips to it. I mean, that's just how cultured the 80s and 90s education was. Like, let's go to a shopping centre, let's spend loads of money, brilliant. But I remember that as a kid, that moment of, well, we're not going to be able to get it in town. We're going to have to go to Meadowhall. And that build up of, oh my goodness, is it going to be there? And what am I going to do? And where are we going to have lunch? It was a whole extravaganza. And therefore, that thing that I used to buy that was in my bag, maybe it was like in a Jane Norman bag or a River Island bag, one of those ones. And I would bring it home and I would treasure it so much. I remember buying some Babyliss crimpers from Boots, and that was another Meadowhall trip. And I'd just seen these, I don't even know where I think I'd seen them on an advert on the telly. And then I'd press play, maybe I'd recorded and then rewound and fast forwarded and got written down the name of what it was, and then gone to the big Boots in Meadowhall and be like, right, I'm going to buy this thing, let's go. And I want people, and I want your people with your offering to have that as well. Now, that's not to say that sometimes when you make those purchases that you're excited about, don't necessarily, sometimes they're a bigger purchase than what you've had previously. And I've always evaluated my pricing system as I've gone through, like doing this for nearly 10 years now, because it's been really important to do that. And I'll talk about this in a minute in terms of really valuing what you have to offer and what you're able to do with this, and the sort of the 360 version of it. So when I keep going back to who is going to love this, I have that person or that group of people in mind. And that makes me very discerning about what goes in there. And I'm thinking about that person or that group of people all the time, like, oh my goodness, how can they're going to love this way, and how can I pull it together, and how can I do X, Y, and Z? And that's when I know I'm hitting a real sweet spot. And I'm not creating it for everybody. Because some people might look at the course and be like, bloody hell, that's expensive. Oh, I'm not doing that. Oh, who does she think she is? Speaking, is this a thing? Oh, no. You can't contemplate. No, not contemplate. What's the word that I'm thinking of? You can't, I'm going to move on because I can't think of the word. It will come back to me. But you can't hold space for all the other people that basically, I want to spend my time and my efforts supporting the people who absolutely love and need the things that I have to offer. I don't want to spend my time trying to convince people, because I'm very much of the thought that you should just do the thing and then people might catch up later, or people might discover you later. So it's been really interesting going through that process and really considering who these people are and what's going to be the best way of conveying this information. Okay, the next point I want to ask is, how are you going to talk about it? And how are you going to consistently talk about it? And also, does this fit in, and are you showing who you really are? So, firstly, let's break that down. How are you going to talk about it? So, this relaunch, I would say, probably in internet marketing terms, it's going to be a soft launch. I'm not going to do a countdown timer. I'm not going to have a horrendous sales page where, I don't know, things pop up, or you're not going to get any emails of like, Nikki, I saw that you were thinking about purchasing this. I'm not going to be pushy. I'm not going to do any of those kind of sales techniques. I don't have a massive team who can follow up and then send bots in Facebook and all of that sort of stuff. But what I can do is I can continue to show the value. And I think this is really important when you're thinking about an online course. It's like, what am I here to do? Am I here to open the doors and then close them and then disappear? Or am I here for the long run? And my feeling is I want to create something that will be standing there like a big oak tree, stoic and ready whenever somebody needs it. So this is not a course where you go, right, you've only got 2 days to do that and get in, or you've missed it. Because now might not be the right time for you to do this, but in a couple of months it might be. Or sometimes there've been times where I'm like, I just financially can't do that right now. So I'm going to save up for it or put a date in my diary and relook at it in a couple of months. And I think really thinking about how you're going to talk about it is important, because sometimes what can happen is you go, right, I'm going to do a big launch and then I'm going to close the doors and then that will be it. And then you get to the end of that and you go, oh, nobody's bought the course. Turns out I didn't really tell enough people about it. And that has happened to me before. About 4 years ago, I launched a course and nobody has ever bought it. True story. Nobody has ever bought it. I put together all this great stuff. And of course, there's probably elements of it that have informed other things that I've done. But I somehow listened to those internet marketers and was like, right, I'm going to put it out there. Google's going to find me and support me because we're busy mates. And off we go. And it's just not the case. So for me, being intentional and being in alignment, I'm going to really consider how I can talk about it. Also, it's important to stand in integrity that you're going to be able to consistently talk about it. And the reason that I sort of said, like, does it fit in with the rest of who you are? This is really important because it's from those conversations where you are showing up as you are that you're going to, I guess, be in your power. And what I mean by this is it has to make sense in terms of your whole ethos, vibe, brand, pricing schedule. So I've used this example before, but there's sometimes moments, we've all seen it on Instagram, or a celebrity does a collaboration or a sponsorship or something, and it's really stark and you're like, oh my God. And you know, I always, with my empathetic self, I always go into that moment of like, oh gosh, maybe they've got a big tax bill that they need to pay because nothing about this makes sense. Or like, oh gosh, I didn't think that they would be into that kind of thing. And sometimes those collaborations feel a bit jarring. So when I'm thinking about bringing my personal brand to life, I really have to make sure that I'm the right person and that this offering or this online course is going to fit in. Now, in terms of Speak Up, it absolutely does fit in because not only have I been a speaker for a long time, I've got an acting background, I've also got this podcasting background because that's what I am. I've been doing it 3.5 years, my goodness me. And also I'm a coach, so I can break this down. And so therefore it makes sense. So therefore I have no problem or no issue talking about what I do, talking about this, because I can stand in integrity with it. I can feel like it's aligned. So I want you to consider that, because sometimes the temptation is, I'll just throw something together and see if I can make some money online. And I get that, of course. Sometimes we just need to make some money. And there have been many times, probably a while ago now, but where I've gone, oh gosh, I've got a big bill coming up. I really need to have an injection of cash. But this is really about playing the long game wherever you can and going slowly but surely. I've got 3 more questions. What capacity do you have? So sometimes people will say, like, I did a 10 grand launch, or I have reached over 100 people with this course. And that's great. But I think it's really about making sure, it's almost if you were having a party outside, it's thinking about, I'm saying like this is something I do every day. I absolutely don't. But if I was planning an outdoor party, an outdoor picnic, for example, and I wanted to have a marquee, I have to choose a marquee that's going to fit the number of people that I have, and do it safely. And do it so people have room to breathe, and I'm going to need to have enough people there so everybody is taken care of. So I think it's important when you think about that capacity, even if it's as a starting point, like what number could you actually take care of? How many people do you want on this situation? Is this going to be a mass market thing? Is this going to be something that people can access and they can just do it and your systems are in place? So for example, I have a course called Business Goals, and as I was sleeping last night, somebody bought it. And that's always a lovely moment when I get a notification from Stripe in the morning. I'm always forever grateful for that. But I feel really confident that that person will consider this a good purchase, if indeed this matches what they thought it was going to be, which of course you can't always allow for. You don't know. But I feel confident that that person would purchase, they would be able to access immediately, and it will all work for them. So in terms of the capacity for that course, for example, it's actually quite big. A lot of people can do that. However, if there are courses that I do, so my personal brand plan, for example, and I have a done with me option, so people work with me for 3 months and I support them every step of the way, I need to make sure that I've got the capacity. So in August 2019, for example, when I was having Luna, I wasn't being like, guys, I'm going to do this massive launch. I want to bring all these people in and I don't care. Like, I don't care. I'm just going to make the money, because we've seen people do this on the internet. And maybe you know who some of these people are, where they just get obsessed with bringing in the money and they have no capacity to fulfill the work. They have no systems in place. They're sort of focused on the wrong thing, in my opinion, essentially. So I want you to think about what capacity you have, which then brings me on to the pricing. There is no right or wrong way. And I wish that I could say this, and it's tricky, because some people, I've heard so many webinars like, you should have a $9 project offering, you should have a $297, you should have a $997, and you should have a $1997, or whatever it is. See, I can't even say the things, and I don't like those weird numbers. I like round numbers. I just like it to feel really good. And whenever I get a whiff that it feels a bit internet marketing, it just makes me run a mile, because it makes me feel like I'm part of a system. I don't know. There's something in it for me. So when I'm thinking about this pricing, it's very important that I can justify it in my own head, and I know that it is possible for people to get a return on investment. And one of the things that I'm very considerate, as I'm going through this, is like, okay, great. If they did 2 of these speaking gigs at this situation, in this environment, they would be able to make the money back easily. Like, it's a no-brainer. So it's that value exchange of making sure that it feels really good for me. And this is what is interesting as well. So the other day I was having a chat with Matt, and I've been doing a lot of running and walking and a bit of yoga. But as a kid, I used to dance probably 4 times a week. And it was essentially training. It was conditioning. It was doing the same thing week in, week out, and building on it. And I said to Matt, I feel like I want to go back to that. I almost want to go back to class and really get in touch with my body again. Ooh, misses. But I'm going to leave that there. So yeah, it was interesting. I literally said that to him a couple of days ago. And yesterday, my dance teacher, who used to teach me when I was a kid, got in touch with me. And she was asking if I would do a talk for her dance studio, because she now has an offering where she is working with a local college, and they're preparing the sort of the equivalent of A-levels, and they're preparing for the next step. And she had 8 in her group, and they're all going to go away to drama school, to dance college, to the Royal Ballet. It's the town that I grew up in. It's full of the most incredible talent. And as I said to my teacher yesterday, maybe because there was now else to do. But incredible teachers there who are so nurturing and go above and beyond. Anyway, she asked me if I would do this talk. And I said, absolutely. And at the end of it, she said, what's your fee? And I knew implicitly, immediately, that this was not going to be, from my point of view, a paid for service. It was my pleasure and my honor to be able to do this talk and basically support the next generation. And I can only do that because I have consistent income and because I can earn in different ways. And of course, I used to do it the opposite way, where I'd be like, oh my goodness, I'll give something away for free, or I'll do this, and everything was freezies. And actually, I needed to come back to a place where I was like, no, it's income first, and then you can do more of the free stuff. So essentially, in terms of this podcast, I don't make any money doing it. It takes quite a lot of my time, but I love making it. And it really is a great part of my creativity, certainly, and also my business model. It all works and makes sense. So it's really important that when you are giving away, as in charging for your best stuff that's really going to have an impact, it's very important that you charge to a situation where it's going to feel really good. And that sometimes is putting some boundaries in place. And it's almost like thinking about how you operate in life. That, for example, you wouldn't have everybody in your bed, or you wouldn't have everybody in your house, like the tiger who came for tea, going, just help yourself and, eat all my food and it's all right, it doesn't matter. Because there are some people that you just don't know. You don't know how those things are going to be taken. And when I work with clients closely, it's a very deliberate decision for me. Like, somebody has just joined this week who's going to be working with me one-on-one. And one of the things that I said on my discovery call was like, I really like you and I'm really excited about your business. And of course, some people might say, well, beggars can't be choosers. You just got to take the work. But I made a decision 3 or 4 years ago that I was like, I'm going to really lean in and pay attention to the people that I want to work with and serve at that highest level. So even though you think that you might be doing somebody a favor by making something really cheap and accessible, sometimes people don't value it. And going back to my value that I want people to absolutely love this, I want it to feel really good. So people go through the process and it's exciting and they really value that experience. So I would love you just to think about your pricing and make sure that you're starting with you first. What's going to feel a really good, energetic exchange? And finally, how can you delight your customers? How can you give above and beyond? So I've been thinking about, in terms of the pricing, whether I'm going to do a discount or not, or an early bird rate. I'm definitely going to do a payment plan. That's really important to me, because sometimes it's just not feasible to have a big bulk of money kind of there and waiting. And sometimes that's a savvy decision just to have a payment plan in place. I use payment plans all the time because we know cash is king or queen. And sometimes it just helps you to forecast. And it's about running a business and it's about doing it in a way that feels really good. I'm not about when people say things like, I literally had 27p in my bank account and then I just invested with a coach and I said I would pay £10,000 and I had no idea how I was going to do that. Like, that to me just doesn't make any sense. But sometimes it does take that payment plan of going, right, I've got the first payment and I'm going to do what she said. And then when the second one comes, I've already made the money back. So it's about being really discerning in terms of delighting your customers and making sure that you're taking care of them. And with all of my online courses, I don't ever want somebody to purchase because they go, well, I had FOMO, so I bought it. Or, well, I kind of liked her vibe, or I watched something and I felt bullied into it. I felt like I was, I would have been a big old loser if I didn't purchase it. No, I'm not into that weird, I don't know if it's NLP, I don't know what kind of weird sales tactics people use, but I'm just not interested in it. I want people there who can feel like it's a great, rounded, justified decision. So going back to being able to delight customers, it's about being able to share the things that they're not necessarily expected. So you will see what I'm going to be outlining in the modules, but there's going to be some surprises in there. There's going to be a few things where you're like, oh my goodness, she gave us this. I wasn't expecting that. Of course. And I'm going to be throwing in all kinds of things in order to delight. Because again, going back to that experience, it's very important that those things are available. So I will leave that there. As always, I would love to hear your comments. Are you thinking about building an online course? What are your next steps? Because remember, and again, people will say, everybody's got to have an online course. Sometimes you don't, but it could be really incredible for you. And as somebody who has done so much learning sitting on my sofa with a baby asleep next to me, safely, of course. That has just been so amazing for me in terms of my learning and my growth. Because sometimes, well, especially in the early days of having babies, I didn't want to go to a big conference centre and sit on an uncomfortable chair and not have breaks and be in a really badly ventilated room and have awful coffee and having to be an extrovert and talk to all the people. No, I want to learn in a way that feels really good. And it sounds so cliche, doesn't it? Like, I want to learn in a way that fits around my children. But I do. But also, I want to learn in a way that fits my personality. So I don't have to be high-fiving and chest-pumping a stranger. It's just not my vibe. Anyway, I would love to hear your thoughts on this episode. Also, if you've got people that you're having conversations with, maybe you've got a mate that's going, yeah, I kind of need to do my course and it's not really moving and it's not doing what it needs to be. Send them this episode. It might be really useful for them. And if you've enjoyed this, please leave a 5-star review. And also message me hello@nikkiraby.com if you are interested in the Speak Up program. It's going to be with you next week. So I'm really excited. I think the link will be going up. Well, I think it'll be up actually by the time this is live for you. So I will link it down below if it is. And I can't wait. I'm really excited. So I will leave all that with you. Big love and speak soon. See ya.